This is going to sound like a cheerleading thing here. I've known Jerry for a number of years. We don't see each other much, maybe once every 5 years. These two pieces he did, if you read nothing else, read them and you will understand what is wrong with American journalism today. Yes, specifically he's writing about the Times, but you could substitute a lot of other names. And he did a phenomenal job. The Times is not, I'm sure, going to offer him a job in the near future, but he is right on the money. The paper is a freaking disgrace when it comes to issues like this. And something else, if people want to think about it, substitute the economy for immigration, and you got almost the same picture. The Times is a class-oriented organization. It could care less about these people out here. Now, with immigration, it pretends it does, but it doesn't. And who really gets screwed in this process are the decent human beings who live along the border, who have a ranch, who farm. I just stumbled into this issue back when Jerry was talking about the peak of the illegals, because it was a subject the Time wanted to do for an investigative piece. And how do I frame this? One of the things I always look for, and Jim always looks for, are people being treated equally? Is there one level? Or are some people treated special? And man, immigration is one of the classics. Corporate America gets what it wants all the time. This problem could be solved tomorrow by simply requiring, which some of you know better than I do, some of the legislation did require, you had to be a citizen to get a job. That's not a difficult thing. And you had all of this stuff thrown up by opponents saying, well, this imposes too big a burden on corporations. Excuse me? When my wife graduated from college years ago, she was going to be a teacher, then other things intervened and she became involved in the newspaper business. But about 3 years ago, she decided, well, take my hand at teaching. At least I can get health care, which really was the motive. She had to spend her own money to get a background check. So corporate America says we can't spend money, but it's okay for you teachers to spend money? Cut me a break. No one in this business asks the right questions. And if you don't ask the right questions, you're never going to know what is wrong. And she had to get an FBI check, a state check. She had to pay for it all to make sure she wasn't a child molester. But yet these people get a pass? I don't think so. That's corporate America exercising its influence, which isn't phony, on a phony issue. There is no reason in the world why a requirement that a person be a citizen for a job should be an onerous, or at least on the track to citizenship. Have a green card, something. For years they had, and this goes way back before my time, the, what was it called, the Bracero program. You can devise any program you want, but make sure it can be enforced, and it is absolutely not, as the other side says, impossible to do. It's only impossible if you don't want to do it. My God, they're making sure that teachers aren't child molesters, so I think at the very least you can make sure that the person applying for the job is on the path to citizenship or is here legally. Put it that way, I guess. But that's not going to happen. And in some ways, this is why I hate to say this, but these kinds of things, after 60 years, I just throw up my hands because no one wants this to happen. Nobody in Congress wants it to happen. I don't care what they say. They do not want it to happen. And it's not going to happen. You can have the best intentions in the world. You can do everything right. And it is not going to happen because they don't want it. And it becomes, who's they? Well, it's the black helicopter people, But if they don't want it, if corporate America doesn't want it, it isn't going to happen. Don't look any further than gun control. The simplest thing imaginable, and they can't get it passed. It's not like they were, somebody was trying to enact a registration legislation, God forbid. But they don't want it. It doesn't get done. It is never going to get done until people in this country wake up. I don't know when that's going to happen. It's not going to be in my lifetime, I know that. But if you want to understand the times, which this is a disgrace, you've got to read Jerry's pieces because I would be so embarrassed to work for, I would never work for that newspaper. I've been doing investigative work for, I don't know, too many years. 45 to 50 years. And that's really all I ever wanted to do. I didn't start, Jim Steele and I have worked together for 40 years. And most of it at the Philadelphia Inquirer and then Time Magazine. And now we do a little bit at Vanity Fair. But before Jim and I hooked up in Philadelphia, I did investigative work in Cleveland and Chicago. And before that, I started in Reading, Pennsylvania, which was in some ways, it was a terrible place to begin because Reading was probably the most corrupt city in the country at the time. Ultimately, the mayor, the police chief, and 2/3 of city council went to prison. So it was a genuinely corrupt city. And I thought it was, I thought this was the way newspapers worked because the publisher told the editor, I want this cleaned up. And so that was it. You just went out and you reported and you made an effort. There was a very misleading experience for me because I believed that all newspapers worked that way. And it wasn't until I got to the Cleveland Plain deal that I said, this is not the same. Most newspapers do not want to do investigative work. They really don't, unless the subject is a safe one. And for years, the safe subject was labor. You can, go after any labor boss you want to go after. Chicago Tribune patented that system, pretending to be an investigative newspaper. Did the Chicago Tribune ever go after a corporation? No. And that's standard. That's kind of standard. The sacred cows have always been the same. They're the same now. Getting too far afield. But to show you just a couple of anecdotes of why this is so important. I don't know if any of you remember the name Ramzi Youssef. But Ramzi Youssef was one of the World Trade Center, the first World Trade Center. He helped engineer the bombing. What was Ramzi Youssef? He was here as a seeking asylum. Does that sound familiar to what happened in Boston? Asylum seekers. We don't learn anything in this country. And part of it is also obscured by the fact that we pretend we have, you can't call it an intelligence system, but a system that will ferret out this stuff. We do not. Let me underscore that. I don't care what you hear in this city. I spent 3 years in counterintelligence at the height of the Cuban Missile Crisis. The people I knew back then would be embarrassed by what they see going on today. Absolutely embarrassed. And so should everyone involved in it today. Because, first of all, they've created this woven mess of whatever it is, 17 or 18 intelligence, that will never, ever, 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 ever work. Intelligence doesn't work that way. And cooperation in this city, no. Oh, 2 minutes? Jesus Christ, you should have told me. Okay, that's it.